Hi, I'm Laura.
Hey, I'm Stefan, and you're listening to Attributed, a podcast library by Dreamdata.
The purpose of it is to store and share all the knowledge that we have gathered across Dreamdata employees through our LinkedIn Lives, podcasts, and webinars.
The typical topics you'll find here can be stuff like marketing,
Sales,
B2B ads,
operations,
social selling maybe.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining in today. I am super excited today because today I'm joined with no other than Chris Walker, somebody that I've been following tightly through the last couple of years. If you haven't, I hope today you'll learn why Chris is so interesting to follow. I've prepped 8-9 buckets, which I'm sure Chris can go on about for an hour each, but we'll try to see where it takes us. Chris, I named this conversation What Matters in B2B Marketing in 24, and you've been right in 23 and 22 and 21. So I'm really excited to hear what comes out of today's conversation. If there's a few people who've never heard about you before, what is the Chris Walker presentation nowadays?
Yeah, we'll keep it light. Stefan, great to be here. As a side note, I'm going to need, because I'm coming to Europe for a couple of weeks, maybe a month, because it gets so hot in Austin. So I'm going to need some tips from you on where to go, Italy, France, other places like that, but we'll handle that another time. Hey, everyone, great to be here. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Chris Walker. I've been a B2B marketer since 2012. I perceive myself more so a business professional at this point. I started my first company, Refine Labs, in 2019. Now an investor and an entrepreneur, and I started a new company called Passetto, which is a go-to-market optimization and analytics company. So maybe we'll get into some details around that as well. I've seen over the past 12 years in my career this transition of what's happening between how B2B buyers are buying and how B2B companies are so slow and oblivious in some ways, oblivious to how buyers have been changing. That was fine up until 2022 when the economy was really good. Economy slows down 2022, 2023. And now B2B companies need to, especially tech and SaaS company, other companies outside of that, med tech, manufacturing, financial services, have a lot more discipline in their financial structure. But in terms of tech SaaS, a lot of companies need to rebuild how they think about go to market. And so looking forward to talking more about that with you today.
Fantastic, Chris. And I didn't get to tell you, but I'm training to a marathon right now. So this Sunday I was listening to you for 2 hours straight. And I really listened to some of the last episodes you put out. I would say to the people who have not listened to the latest ones, there's one that is called Must Listen, where you, Chris, go through kind of that crazy last 5 years you've had. And I think for anybody who've been following you, they should really actually take a listen on that to understand the behind the scenes bit, because it sounds really, it's been extraordinarily hard. But my first question would actually be, you got into it a little bit, but what is the kind of, how have you seen this whole B2B marketing world go through like a change the last 5 years since you founded Refine Labs?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of core changes that have happened over the past 5 years. One, COVID induced adjustments to how B2B professionals research, discover, and purchase products. So pre-COVID, a lot of executives, especially ones that are sort of older or later in their career, didn't use LinkedIn every day, weren't part of a Slack community, didn't come to a live event like this one. And then through the period of COVID and the work from home and those types of things, all those people started to be trained about how to go and find their peers online, how to engage with a community, how to get information that way. And what they found is that they trust that information and they get a lot better information that way than the sources they used to trust, like Google or an analyst firm or other places like that. So that's one big shift of how B2B executives get information and make purchasing decisions. There's been an economic slowdown from 2022 forward, where before B2B companies might get a 20 to 100x revenue valuation, especially tech and SaaS companies, which have now normalized to 4 to 6x where they belong, which puts tons of pressure on the sales and marketing expenditures that B2B companies have, and the allowable CAC payback periods that they're able to have, which puts a lot of pressure on, how effective is our marketing? What's the actual ROI of our SDR team? How many operations people do we actually need? Do we need those 7 tech tools, or should we consolidate it into one tool that's way cheaper? All those questions are starting to be asked. I think those are 2 of the big trends that I've seen, and looking forward to getting more detail. I think the one about just the scrutiny around go-to-market investments is probably the number one thing that people need to be, that companies have to make adjustments for in 2024 and forward. So we can get deeper into that.
Yeah, I think that was also one of the observations I did as you were talking to my ear while I was running in this weekend. The CAC payback period. If we are to get a little bit specific, maybe you can just explain for those who don't know what it is, where it were and where it probably is today.
Yeah, so customer acquisition cost payback period, the simple math is how much net new ARR do you acquire in a period of time divided by how much you spend in order to acquire that on sales and marketing and operations and technology and all those different things. In a public SaaS company right now, the median is around 40 months somewhere. There's benchmarks around there in 40 months. In private companies, I see it pushing closer to 60, which means that it takes you 5 years to pay back the cost of just getting the customer so that your business doesn't actually profit off of that customer for that period of time, which, 3.5 to 5 years is a long time that you have to retain that customer, and then you actually become profitable. And when your business gets valued at, if you're a 5 million ARR business and you get valued at 100 million, 20x revenue, you can make that math work until you raise the next round. But when there's pressure on valuations and now your 5 million ARR SaaS company that isn't growing very fast is now worth $12 million instead of $100 million, it puts a lot of pressure on the capital expenditures that you can use to acquire customers and grow. And so in short, that's sort of what's going on. I've analyzed personally Salesforce data straight from the CFO, put those two things together, look at what's happening at private SaaS companies. And the average we see today is somewhere between 48 and 60 months through 2023, partially because companies spend too much on sales and marketing and don't have enough pressure on the efficiency. But then also the amount of customers that companies have acquired, the amount of money that other companies are spending to buy their technology has gone down. So you see this happening in two ways. Companies spend too much money on sales and marketing, and they're getting way less customers now than they did 2 or 3 years ago. Those two things compound, it gets really ugly.
I'm really honestly surprised to hear that you see that high acceptable payback periods, because that means you can invest a lot of money. And if you're just able to make some math work in a 4 or 5 year perspective, the companies would actually accept this kind of every time they spend $1, it's going to take them 5 years to get that dollar back.
Yeah, it's sort of crazy when you think about it. And when we analyze some of the highest performing too. So it's not just like every company that comes in and works with us is a total disaster, but even the best performing companies are coming in at 2-year cost to pay back a customer, a great cybersecurity company in a hot market, great brand, leading in their category, still taking 2 years. And if you go and look at like a Salesforce or an Adobe or some of the other publicly traded companies, they're still sitting at 24 to 36, 40 months as well. And it's just a lot of time. And if you go into other industries, you go into professional services, you go into medical device or manufacturing, you go into those types of industries, you see CAC payback periods less than 12 months. This is really isolated to technology and SaaS, driven by the changes in valuation multiples in this space.
And then kind of, let's say the CFO walks in the door now and say the 48, 60 months, that's over. You need to get down to the 24 months or even less than that. What is the good way and what is the bad way of trying to lower this CAC then?
Yeah, so to be clear, CFOs have been saying this since the middle of 2022 or late 2022 at the absolute latest. And the issue is that it takes a long time to unwind. It takes a really long time to try and figure out how do we get the same amount of revenue at half the cost. The bad way to do it is to say, okay, we need to figure out how to lower our CAC by 20%. So let's cut sales by 20%. Let's cut SDRs by 20%. Let's cut marketing headcount by 20%. Let's cut marketing programs by 20% and just take a blanket cut across the entire go-to-market. The reason being is that in order to actually make this effective, what you need to do is you need to improve the ROI of your go-to-market investments, which means identifying the things that are the lowest ROI and removing them, and identifying the things that are highest ROI and doing more of them. And so that's at its most basic form, that's what it comes down to. But most companies have taken blanket cuts. They look for what the easiest things to cut are. Let's find our agencies and fractionals and consultants. They're not our employees, so we won't have to do a layoff. So let's just get rid of them even if they are the highest producing ROI. Oh, our advertising expenditures are easy to cut, so we don't have to lay off. Let's just do that. Our outsourced SDR firm. So what companies do first is they look for all of the expenses that don't require them to do a layoff, and they cut all those. That happened in 2022. Then they realized in early 2023, that's not going to be enough. They started doing layoffs. Layoffs happened a lot in 2023 across a lot of companies. I talked about that on my podcast. And now they're sitting at a point where they've done a lot of cost cutting in 2024. They're still not at the metrics they need to get to. And then they need to figure out, how do we actually make every dollar that we spend work a lot harder? And I think that's where we are in 2024.
It's just like, it's super interesting as a marketer to follow these developments that used to be growth at all cost. And of course, that cannot be sustained. As you said, that there's not unlimited money. Then the next year comes around and, oh, you couldn't actually just do growth at all costs. And now we actually need to be effective with our money. Maybe just to do a plug, is that what, I bet you get this question all the time, but is that what Passetto is doing now, as opposed to Refine Labs that orchestrates the marketing? I've been thinking a little bit about the distinction between the two orgs.
Yeah, so Refine Labs is a digital demand agency and account-based marketing agency. We help companies optimize their advertising expenditures, their targeting, their content development, how they report inside of their digital demand engine. Passetto is much more focused on the entire go-to-market, looking at sales, SDRs, operations, technology, and optimizing the expenditures across all of the go-to-market motions. Passetto also builds technology. We have proprietary technology that does signal-based analytics. When you look at the signal category that's rapidly developing, and I'm very excited about this, I see it sort of breaking up into multiple subcategories that people haven't defined yet. You have signal providers, think Trust Radius, Bambora, people like that are user gems that look at specific signals and then provide them to you. You have signal aggregators that then pull in all those signals, Bambora and all that stuff, and bring it all together, like a 6sense, potentially what Dreamdata is getting into, things like that. And then you have signal analytics, is that what Passetto is focused on, and I don't think many people are right now, which is then measuring the impact of all of those signals, so that you know which signals suck, which ones are good, which ones should we do more of, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's how I see the signal category. When you look back, account-based marketing over the past 5 years has taken a very large growth, which is all about, is the fit of the account right? Do we have the right person in the account? Is the right vertical? Is it the right company size? Does it fit into our segmentation? All about fit. The next wave of go-to-market is going to be focused on what signals do those good fit accounts send us, so we know the optimal time to invest advertising dollars, to invest sales and SDR human capital to go out and try and get meetings and acquire that pipeline. In 2019, that shit didn't matter. Companies would spend massive amount of money and they could do 10,000 actions and waste a lot of money to get one customer. And now they have to be a lot smarter about when we reach out, when we use our expensive $110,000 a year SDR or $250,000 or more plus AE, or all the advertising expenditures that we have. We have to be a lot smarter about when we deploy those investments and who we deploy them against.
I'm super fascinated by this signals narrative that you've kind of developed. And for those of us who've been following you some time, you used to talk about demand creation. How does this demand generation, demand capture refer to kind of the signal-based selling and activating signals and stuff?
Yeah. And so when most companies run their like pipeline analytics, the pipeline analytics start when the opportunity gets created. But the reality is there's this entire period of time between when the account sends the signal and when sales actually reaches out to when an opportunity is created that is basically a black hole and not connected against the opportunity. And when you look at the data, what you find is that the things that happen before the opportunity is created create massive predictors in sales velocity, win rates, sales productivity, quota attainment, marketing ROI, all of these different details that companies don't see right now. And so the idea of a signal is to extend what pipeline means from the time that sales reaches out to the time account sends us a signal and sales reaches out, all the way to closed won, and looking at that as a discrete process. So when you separate this is really from intent capture to closed won, separate from demand creation. And the reality is that B2B companies, when they look at their go-to-market investments, spend 85-90% of the total go-to-market investment on this part of the process. And so while I love podcasts, I love brand, I love posting content organically on LinkedIn and things like that, the B2B companies just don't spend a lot of money there. And so the biggest opportunity to optimize your go-to-market is to look at where is most of the money spent and then optimize that process, which is where we're initially focused on at Passetto.
And this is it's really fascinating. It really connects a lot of stuff for me because we've always been doing marketing, but why is it that we want to do marketing? Well, then we start saying, okay, we do marketing to produce revenue. But what is it that leads to revenue from all the marketing you do? That is the signals that we know that are kind of predictably turning into revenue. So I really like that one.
Yeah, the simplest example for people listening that aren't that familiar with signals is that when most B2B companies like target and do sales outreach, it's all about the fit, right? So let's find our tier one account and let's find the, CIO at that account if that's our persona, and then let's just do a bunch of outreach and let's run advertising to those people. But when you actually look at the data, the signal really matters. If you take a cold lead out of Zoom Info, which is a signal, cold lead, or you take the same CIO that submitted a pricing request on your website or attended your webinar or came to this event, that the ability for your sales team to create pipeline and close them will be dramatically different between those two things. Different signal, same account and same person. And so what we need in the future is to basically map a quadrant between signals and fit, and then identify these are the signals that matter for this segment. These are the signals that matter for this vertical. What B2B companies don't see is all the times that they lose. And so B2B data has a major survivorship bias. They only look at the times that they win. And when we're thinking about how do we optimize our go-to-market, the biggest thing to do is look at all the times that you lose and stop doing those things. But B2B data, the way that it's set up is that basically every time a buyer sends a signal, they send a signal and then your sales team reaches out and then you lose, and the buyer sends another signal and then it overwrites that data and then it goes and then you lose, and you could lose 99 times, but you only see the one time that you win the 100th time. And so we requiring a new data structure to track signals as an independent new dimension of your data alongside contacts and accounts and opportunities and campaign members, and that type of detail is really what we need in order to see these insights.
I think it makes so much sense in terms of aligning the go-to-market org, because a signal is not you have to wait 12 months until the contract is signed. You can do your activity and then instantly or within weeks, you'll know whether that signal triggered after you did your marketing activity. And vice versa on the sales team, you get the sales team to focus on the signals because you have data that proves that when those signals are present, the velocity goes up, they convert faster.
And my favorite part about signals, to be direct, is that it gets rid of the inbound, outbound marketing sales conversation. We're a go-to-market team. Here are all the signals that are available. Let's forget whether marketing or sales did it, and let's focus as a chief revenue officer and a CMO and a head of RevOps on what are the signals that matter, not putting these binary distinctions of, oh, marketing did that and sales did that. I think we desperately need that in go-to-market. And I watch a lot of companies use siloed department level analytics where the SDR team has their data over here, the marketing team has their data over here, the sales team has their data over here. They then roll it up into the QBR report. None of the data matches up. So B2B executives don't have the right data to make decisions. They don't have confidence in it. So what do? Take a blanket cut across the go-to-market or make no decision and take inaction, which is what a lot of the companies that we analyze have done over the past year. Oh, we didn't, we thought that was happening, but we weren't able to look at the data that way. So we've just sat on that decision for the past 12 months. We kept spending $1 million a month on Google Ads. We didn't scale our webinars, but we thought that they were working, or X, Y, and Z.
This is super brilliant, Chris. To change gear a little bit, there's a question that most of our customers come with, and that is kind of related to how is it that we elevate marketing to have that kind of seat at the revenue table, so we're not kind of the underdogs to sales anymore? How can we change this narrative in our org? And probably you're one of the people in the world that have some of the best answers to this question. So as a marketer in a B2B company, how do you take that step from being kind of the supplier of leads to being regarded as somebody who's producing revenue for your company?
For marketers to start thinking like a C-suite executive instead of a department level leader in marketing, to have a perspective on the finance and the CAC payback and how the ROI is calculated, to have a perspective on how the sales process works and how we can be more efficient and things like that. Maybe as a marketer, you should start calling the leads just like your SDRs do so that you get to experience that. Maybe as a marketer, you should find some people and pitch them just like your sales team does so you understand what that's like. I think that there's often, not always, often marketers sit in a little silo, get sometimes looked at as the pretty picture department. And the way that you break out of that is that you start looking at it as a business professional, not just as a marketer.
It's so true. You need to get out of that department. And what I'm hearing you saying is also you need to speak the language that the rest of the company cares about, and not just clicks on an ad or leads submitted on LinkedIn or whatever it is.
And to actually do it. Like, as a marketer in 2017, I went out into the field with our sales team, and I would pitch the product to other people, and I would see what objections do people have, what things don't they understand, where in the sales process are we losing, where are deals stalling out, which then gave me a large perspective about what content do we need to create, where are we going to advertise, what influencers do we need to use to unblock these key parts in the sales process. When we were running, in 2017, I read the Salesforce ebook, or I don't want to throw Salesforce under the bus, whoever's ebook it was, big tech company that said, okay, build a gated ebook, run Facebook and LinkedIn ads against it, collect these leads, automate them into an email nurture. After the 7th email, pass them to the SDR, let the SDR call them. And I played the SDR role back then. And so what did I do? I called the people, I emailed them, I heard how they responded, and I made a binary decision after making 10 calls that these people are not ready to buy. Why am I going to send this to our AE? Why am I going to send this to our SDR? And so being able to actually be a part of those processes and get those learnings allows you to be a much better marketer, because you see the exact same things that your other cross-functional teams are seeing.
Yeah, and I can just testament that I probably did the first 100 demo calls at Dreamdata, and you get a lot of respect for not throwing in crappy leads to the salespeople, because you're stuck there for half an hour where you just need to get time going, and you know it's never going to be a sale. So if sales complain about the quality, take a couple of the demo calls themselves and see for yourself whether it's a waste of time or not.
100%.
Actually, I sometimes use the simple trick of just imagining you having to physically present this lead to your salesperson, like walking into the room saying, "Hey, this is your grandma. She's 67 years old, and she wants to buy our software." Do you think that that's possible? Right? Probably not.
Yeah, I mean, the way that I always looked at it in 2017, we had 40 sales reps across the country. They were flying around doing demos. We had 4 SDRs that were it was field sales. They were like going and doing the demos. They were in hospitals every day. They also played account management. So they were taking care of current customers and trying to expand them. They were busy. Their jobs were hard. Why would I want to send them 10 shitty leads and waste their time? And so I took a huge responsibility of every time that I sent a potential customer to our sales team, that they were going to have the highest probability to win that over any other activity that they could do.
That's how you get respect from sales. Okay, I'm gonna post 1 or 2 more questions, and then we have then I'm gonna take all the questions that's been posted in the comment field. So, 1, have you kind of found a metric framework nowadays that you advise most B2B companies to run by, to kind of sort of establish kind of these are the numbers we talk about, forget about all the other numbers?
I mean, there's a ton of directions that we can take this. You can take it at the CEO, CFO level, which is, CAC payback, return on sales and marketing expenditures. So there's one angle. If as a go-to-market leader, I like breaking it down into sales velocity and the 4 components of sales velocity: ACV, win rate, sales cycle, pipeline generated. So you have like some good details there that align sales and marketing together across those 4 metrics. When we think about optimizing signals, we don't have it perfect yet, but right now we use sales velocity as one of the core metrics to optimize against signals. And when you have great signals, sales velocity is really high. When you have bad signals, sales velocity is really low. Signal to win ends up being a really good metric, because a lot of signals that sales acts on, they'll do 1,000 actions to win 1 deal, which is a massive inefficiency inside of the go-to-market that most B2B companies don't see right now, especially didn't see it in the growth at all costs era. So there's a variety of angles to take it. And then when you look at marketing, it's not a perfect metric, but I do think it's great for both benchmarking and looking at trending performance, which is marketing ROI and a leading and a lagging indicator. So lagging is just, marketing expenditures to create pipeline and revenue against the amount of pipeline and revenue that's created. So you have a revenue metric, which is lagging. You have a pipeline metric, which is leading. If that metric's going in the right direction on pipeline, you can expect that downstream to be, more effective on revenue as well. And so I think those become core metrics to look at. And given that B2B companies spend a majority of the money, both on marketing and SDRs, just to create pipeline, not to build brand, not to expand customers, not to convert active pipeline, a majority of the money gets spent to create signals and create pipeline. And so with that, I think it becomes a very straightforward metric that a lot of companies can look at, both to compare themselves against others, but also to trend their performance quarter over quarter.
I love how you I was expecting you to kind of paint a funnel of leads, marketing qualified leads, sales opportunities, etc. But what I'm really hearing you talk about is how much does it cost to acquire a new dollar? Like how much are you investing in marketing and how much money is coming out on the other side? Just want to double check with the sales velocity, meaning that's like in simple terms, it's the time it takes from, say, a demo call being booked until a client is won. Is that correct?
That is referred to as sales cycle. Sales velocity is different. There's a difference between velocity and speed. So sales cycle is how long does it take? You can define this, whether it's from signal to close one, opportunity created to close one, demo to close one. Just make sure you use it consistently with inside your company. But then sales velocity is combining it. So it's average contract value from close one deals during the analysis period, the amount of pipeline and the amount of opportunities that you've created within that same time period, the win rate of those opportunities based on close one and close loss deals, divided by the sales cycle length and the amount of days inside the period. And that gives you a combined metric, because as go-to-market professionals, what most go-to-market professionals seem to think is that, oh, the only way that we can augment growth at our company is to create more pipeline. But in reality, if you close deals twice as fast, that's going to make a huge impact. If you increase win rates from 20% to 40%, you'll double your revenue just off of that with the same amount of pipeline. And so there's a lot of levers that we have as go-to-market professionals to increase the efficiency, the productivity, the growth of our company that doesn't involve just, spending more ad dollars to create more pipeline.
Absolutely. And I think that's probably a good segue to take the first question here. So Blake is asking, what is an example of a signal to win ratio?
So in the companies that we analyze, like let's say that one signal might be that a buyer submits a pricing request on your website, right? So that could be a signal. In the analysis, you'll win those signals from the exact signal to close one somewhere between 5 and 12%, which is huge. Like your sales team talks to somewhere between 8 and 20 people in order to win a deal. Conversely, if you pull a cold lead out of Zoom Info, or you have someone that downloaded your ebook through SEO on your website, that the signal to win of those deals is going to be less than 0.1%, which means that the same salespeople need to expend somewhere between 50 and 100x the amount of activities to win the same amount of revenue. If you look at a PQL or a free trial sign up, those will be incredibly low as well. Sometimes the exact same thing as a gated ebook, which is something that now we have data to show, but something that I've been saying for a long period of time, that a free trial sign up is basically just like getting a gated ebook lead in a different way, because the signal to win ratios are about the same.
Yeah, it's funny with those ebooks. When you first start studying the conversion rate, if you do like a super broad ebook to pipeline, you're gonna need thousands of conversions. So stop doing those ebooks. Okay.
So then you can just to go a little bit further for Blake, then you can take that and stack rank the basically signal to win across all the signals in your go-to-market, not just your first-party website or what people view as marketing signals, but also what about the signals that UserGem says that your sales team wins? What about just like taking 6 Sense intent data? What about all the other things, like your partners you're connected with some partner software and you have second-party data? We need to be able to look at all of those things together, look at the cost of the signal and the signal to wins to be able to really understand the efficiency.
Yeah, I think the point is there's an infinite amounts of accounts out there, but you need to be spending the time on the accounts that are showing the signals that looks like somebody who's in market to buy at the moment.
And then conversely, once you're able to optimize that process, and instead of spending $20 million to get $5 million, now you're spending $5 million to get $5 million, then you have a ton more money to go out and figure out how do we get more of our accounts to create those signals, i.e. demand creation. Companies can't spend there right now because of how inefficient their intent capture to close one process is.
Yeah, and then there's a follow-up to just what you just said from Teresa. Why free trial is converting so low? That's strange if they're interested in software.
Because a majority of B2B companies get their free trial signups by running performance marketing on Google Ads or high volume SEO that drives a lot of people into a free trial that either spam, SMB, would never want to buy the product. It's just a function of how companies get the free trials. So that's generally what we see of why it's converting so low. If you look at like PLG benchmarks, which by the way, I don't believe, but the PLG benchmarks will say 5% of free trials will convert. We're typically seeing that far less than 0.5%, which is 10x less than what the benchmark is. So it's generally just how companies get the free trials and their need to use advertising dollars to pump up their MQLs or their free trial signups, which when you just spend more money to do that, what do? You dramatically increase the volume while also dramatically decreasing the quality. You end up getting about the same thing out.
And as a marketer, you need to be studying what is coming through that free trial door. And then does it look like the people who are normally buying, or is it something at Gmail or at Yahoo or whatever it is? Then you need to figure out what's sending you all this crap.
Yep. And then back in the day in like 2020, I remember that PLG companies would be able to raise a Series B based on free trial sign-up growth. So what would they do? They would just spend $200,000 a month to get 5,000 more free trial signups so they could raise their $20 million Series B. And it didn't matter if any of those customers were qualified to buy, if they converted to an enterprise customer or anything like that back in the day. All that stuff is out the window, but a lot of the bad behavior and the best practices around that were created during that time still exist today.
Yeah, I don't know what we were doing back then. Like the signals questions are really going off here, Chris. So I'll give you another one. So when we're talking about signals, is it best to look at account level? Or I'm guessing the opposite is the like individual level?
So no matter what, when your sales team takes action, they take action against a person. And so when you look at signals basically can be created through a person level signal. You got these things like B2B that get like de-anonymize a person on your website, or someone fills out a form, or someone attends your webinar, and then you have a person level signal. You also could have account level signals. And what's the process of what happens when you have an account level signal? You get an account level signal, your sales team goes into a contact database, they pull out contacts, and then they go and take action against contacts. And so the beauty of signals is that you can actually look at it at an account level, and you can look at it at a person level simultaneously with the same data structure. And so we need to have, person to account matching, which most companies have at this point. HubSpot does it natively, many others, there's tools to do it. But when you think about actually taking action, like our sales team is not just reaching out and sending it to, Adobe at adobe.com. There's a person that they're actually engaging with. So when you think about signals, you might get an account level signal, which then drives you to reach out to 5 different people. And those are sort of the way to look at it. But the beauty of it is that we can look at it in both dimensions, account level, and we could create an account level structure of what are the signals that these accounts are sending us and the people inside of those accounts, and look at that across the whole spectrum, which signals got us into pipeline, which got us into meetings. And you can look at it at a person level and then bubble it up to the account level.
Brilliant. Okay, let's change lanes a little bit. So here's a question I know you have a great answer to, or at least you did, because you built 2 successful agencies. What is the best B2B marketing tip for a startup that doesn't have so much resources? Forget about the business model.
The business model doesn't matter.
Yeah. If you don't have any resources, what do you do to actually build a company?
When you don't have money, you have time and expertise and speed and being smarter than the people. A lot of people think about not having money as a disadvantage. I consistently look at it as an advantage, because when you don't look at all what the big companies do, they waste millions of dollars on a bunch of dumb shit. They have tons of politics and overhead and meetings about stuff that doesn't matter. In my 3-person company, we can make decisions fast. We can do things that actually work. If things don't work fast, we can iterate and change really quickly. You just innovate a lot faster when resources are limited. Where does that lead you? It leads you to producing expert level content, distributing that organically, building a community or building some type of movement against signals or whatever you're trying to tell, hosting live events, which are basically free outside of the, $40 a month package to actually produce them. And where you win there is customer expertise, having a great strategy, knowing how to create and distribute content effectively, which carries through for your entire professional lifetime and the lifetime of the business. And so it leads you into those places that actually create scale and ROI.
Super nice. So now there's a question about, let's talk probably broadly about how you think AI is impacting go-to-market. But I'll just read out the question that Yusuf have written for us. How do you see Gen AI is affecting the decision-making on selling? I'm curious to hear how you see like the whole AI pushing into go-to-market, and what does that mean for what's coming up next?
The first thing that AI is going to do, and it's already happening, is just replace the actions that happen with expensive human capital that are inefficient. So the first thing to go is going to be SDRs, not all of them, but many of them, especially SDRs that target SMB and mid-market deals where the cost structure just doesn't make sense, that those things will then get triggered off of AI sending an email, AI doing a voicemail drop, AI sending a LinkedIn message instead of having a human do it, which is going to be more consistent, faster, better data, things like that. So that's the first thing that I see, because when you think about like SDRs going outbound and you look at the data, when they do personalized outreach, those types of things actually drive revenue for most B2B companies, especially mature companies. The problem is it's just far too expensive and super inefficient. And so what is the solution to that? Instead of having 10, 100K, 100K salary SDRs doing it, what if we have 200K salary SDRs do it, augmented the other 8 people by AI instead of that $800,000 a year? Like that's going to be the first thing that happens with Gen AI, and it's already happening. B2B companies are running experiments with this. They get better results on their personalized outreach with AI than they do with a human. That's happening. When we think about the full stack of AI, the way I look at it is that B2B companies they're good to lower costs and automate things right now. Like that's something that can happen right now, but their core data structure does not allow for this to fully happen right now. What you need, we have like account fit. Most companies have all of their good fit accounts inside of the CRM. You can automatically get the job titles and the people. So like the fit around that is set up for success. Companies do not track signals at all right now. Most, like somewhere between 20 and 30% of signals are tracked. 70% is a total black hole for B2B companies. And so they do not have the right data to know what is the right time to reach out and why are we reaching out and what is the outcome of that. So that's going to be the next wave. And then lastly, the final wave will be what is the right message? What is the right channel? When should we send it? What should the cadence be? What should it be AI? When should we use a human for that? Should we use LinkedIn or should we use email? What should the subject line be? How do we optimize and iterate that? AI will be really good at that once we know what the right time is to reach out. So the sequence, right fit, right time, right message, right channel.
Brilliant, Chris. It's going to be interesting to see like if this access to like personalization gets democratized. Are we then as receivers of outbound stuff just going to block everything? How do you then actually get through? Is it better personalization or is there other plays you need to be making as well?
The only thing that matters in the future is what your customers say about you and what your community and content consumers say about you to your target market. The only thing that matters. Yeah. Because all of the other sources, including Google, what's going to happen with AI, review sites that are getting gamed left and right, analyst firms that get paid to give bad advice, all of the other sources of information are becoming gamed and biased and not trustworthy. And so where is it going to be? It's going to be B2B buyers trust their peers more than anybody else. I've been saying that since 2020, and that will continue to grow in importance over time.
Absolutely. I heard you also saying, that was actually quite smart move of you, that you notice as soon as your posts on LinkedIn started to take off, you'd have these people in different languages just copying, pasting them to their own language. And that the AI can do for you. So your counter to that was to start to be on a video, because they cannot be your physical body saying the same things. And that helped you kind of stand out in the crowd, at least for a good while.
Yeah, it's interesting when there's shifts in the market that it drives innovation. Like when people started copying my LinkedIn text posts in 2019, I wasn't thinking, oh my God, like video's the future. This is going to be amazing. It was just thinking like, okay, people aren't going to be able to copy what I say. And somebody that copies my post and takes it and copies it into German is not going to be able to speak on it in a video or a live event or answer questions with Stefan the way that I am. So boom, done. And now what's happening today is that there's a lot of companies that are copying your messaging. It's never been easier to update your homepage copy. One day they're an ABM platform. The next day they're a signal company. The next day they're a sales AI optimization company. It's never been easier to change your website and change your messaging and copy someone and pretend that you're something that you're not. And so what's that going to happen? B2B buyers trust websites less. They trust customer stories less because they understand who's creating them and what their intentions are. And so I don't know how exactly I'm going to react to this one, but there's a new thing happening where basically everyone's copying, and it's going to drive more innovation for us. It's sort of too bad, because where I'm leaning in this is that before it's been pretty much all open content, right? Like I've given away all my best stuff for free for the past 6 years. It's helped a ton of people. And what's happening now with AI is that basically anyone can create open content. And as a consumer of information, the only thing that matters for you is what are the right sources of information, because information is commoditized. It's not only about what information do I get, it's about, is this the right information for me? And so I expect that in the future, there's going to be a lot more closed systems where the information is closed off and not public and things like that. And people will then have to decide, am I going to trust what Chris Walker says or what Gartner says or what this person says? Or am I going to trust what I get on LinkedIn that I see from some random person that might be AI generated? It's really up to you as a consumer now to make the decision about what content should I trust. It's a lot different than it was 5 or 10 years ago.
That's super nice. And I know you also do, is it a weekly session you do where people can join you live and have that one-to-one kind of conversation with you?
Yeah, the weekly session happens at 12 Central Time. It'll happen today on Tuesday, so that'll be coming up in about an hour.
If people want to sign up to that and be part of it, Chris, what do they do?
I think there's customers. A link. If you go to Passetto.com, there's now a link to sign up in the the main nav. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Couple of questions left, and then I'll let you get on with it. So if we talk about, I love hearing about a tactic that works right now. So, and you must see so many different things out there. What is the kind of highest ROI examples that you're seeing at the moment? This is Mohammed asking this as well, but I love a tactic that I can steal from you and go implement myself.
Yeah, I'll talk about some of the highest ROI, but just so people have some clarity on the process, especially with a mature and developed company, step one in the process is to eliminate all the low ROI things. It's much easier to find low ROI things than to clearly identify the high, and isolate the high ROI things. And so what are the lowest ROI things? Google ad spend, number one. Terrible ROI, terrible CAC payback. When you put in sales and SDR and all the other costs, it literally makes no fucking sense. And I can't believe companies continue to do it when the data is sitting right in front of them about how bad it is. LinkedIn ads are often very poor, especially when used as a lead gen mechanism. And so using a LinkedIn lead gen form is a signal on its own. And B2B companies will spend, $150, $300, up to $1,000 for a lead gen form of a C-level executive, and then get those people into customers at 0.1%. Metadata produced aggregated data study with hundreds of companies and hundreds of thousands of leads that came from those things. CAC paybacks are untenable. Lead to win rates are terrible. Just performance marketing advertising generally tends to be a very poor ROI because companies don't measure it against CAC. They measure it against cost per lead. So the metrics can look good up front and they don't actually materialize. And so the way that companies measure them create the illusion that things are working fine when they're really not. Conference trade, especially national conference trade show booths, tend to be incredibly low ROI. Companies spend millions, big companies spend tens of millions of dollars to build a fucking booth in Las Vegas for 2 days, have some people show up, have no tangible revenue for it. And then what they do is they look for all of these unmeasured, assumed second order outcomes like, oh, we did that for brand awareness, or remember that customer? We had that customer in the booth, like maybe we'll expand them in the future. And they look for all these different excuses to justify why, when they can't actually look at a direct ROI, and then they look at every other investment they have on a direct ROI, but the things that they think they should do, they apply all these second order outcomes to justify things that aren't working. When you think about the highest, when you think about the highest order ROI activities, really, most of it comes down to the cost structure. So part of it is effectiveness, but a lot of it is that you just don't spend as much on it. Therefore, you get a much better ROI. So in the events category, webinars in almost every company that we analyze, webinars are the highest performing signal, while national trade show booths are the lowest performing. Why? Because webinars are less expensive and a lot more scalable, and trade show booths are very expensive and not scalable and things like that. Organic content, specifically content for social, tends to be really strong, especially when measured against self-reported attribution and a variety of mechanisms, not just UTMs or things like that. And those are a couple of the core things. But when you look at and then there's a really weird, it's a hard to explain effect, but companies get a lot of their customers that have nothing to do with their marketing investments. And they don't know. They think it's because their SEO strategy is so good, when in reality, their happy customers are telling somebody else in a community That person searching the brand in Google, coming to the website, getting a demo, they're back at HQ saying our SEO strategy is working so good, let's scale our SEO agency, when in reality, none of their marketing had anything to do with closing that customer. So there's this idea of organic market demand is what I've been calling it. I'll try to find a better term for it, where you're going to get that customer no matter what and has nothing to do with the marketing investments.
We actually have a filter in our Google search ads report in Dreamdata where we can get rid of the branded search keyword, and that just destroys the ROI of Google search ads, because it's a quarter of what you're getting in that is actually like, let's call it demand gen is probably saying too much, but it's where it's not your brand that is just capturing all the effects of everything else that you've been doing.
Generally,
Kristen,
what we see, just to clarify,
ahead,
we see the same thing in the data, that 20% of Google ad spend goes to branded terms, and that drives more than 80% of the revenue. And then 80% of the spend goes to non-branded terms and drives less than 20% of the revenue. Yeah. And then all of that category of the 80% of the spend, like that's where you go and find all your cuts. And really you take that 80% and you really spend like 5% on the money keywords that actually have a high ROI. But then even on the branded side, companies are getting a 36-month CAC payback, total CAC, when you think about sales and SDRs and things, on somebody that's searching for their brand. So that's unacceptable as well.
Absolutely. Chris, there's one thing as a marketer that I've really always admired from you, and that is your ability to develop a narrative or to kind of come up with a new story. And it's a little bit the same you need to do as a company when you go to market. You need to do something that catches on. Have you ever talked about how you go about this process of how do you pick a narrative? How do you know when you have a winner? What is it that you do to kind of come up with these winning stories that you kind of lash on for a certain amount of time?
By creating such a rapid feedback loop between you and your target market. That's it. I do three or more of these events every week where I'm on a live event. People are asking questions so that they help me clarify. I'm watching people's heads nods or people not understand things. So I have a content framework on live events that allow me to get rapid feedback and questions to help clarify the perspective. Then I can take that exact same content and post it on LinkedIn and get 100 comments about people that say, this is dumb, this doesn't make sense, or this is so smart, you're a genius, or ask questions that help clarify the perspective again. And then I take sales calls with people that come in and I'm pitching the product, which is a different type of pitch than creating content. And then you're pitching the product and building the sales deck and iterating on the proposal. And then you're going to get questions on, hey, I don't understand this part of the proposal. Can you clarify these deliverables? Can you do this thing? And the only thing is just shortening the time window between when you say something and when you get feedback from your target customer and making that happen super fast. 4 months ago, people thought that Passetto was the same thing as Refine Labs. In 2 months, they're going to realize that it's a totally fucking new game. But it just takes some time to figure that stuff out and build your narrative and get responses from the market. And I think people underappreciate the process that it takes to get there.
It's a hard discipline because there's not the kind of, you can study the click and what became of the click. It's kind of, but I guess the foundation, totally, I agree. But that foundation for being able to like make it art must be this thing about being super close to the market, super close to the community or the customers, because that's what enables you to have a feedback loop at all. And I think like your podcast and your weekly lives and your community is kind of, that's your training ground for every narrative that you have.
100%.
Wonderful, Chris. I want to thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. If people want to do business with you, what's the funnel nowadays? Where do you need to go?
Yeah, so I mean, honestly, the easiest way, shoot me a DM on LinkedIn. And if you had a question that you wanted to ask that you didn't get answered today, shoot me that on a DM. If you do it within the hour, I'll answer it on my live event at noon Central. And then if you're interested in working with any of my businesses, Hatch, Refine Labs, or Passetto, or you like trying to figure out what to do in marketing your go-to-market engine, you're not sure what to do, just feel free to shoot me a note. If one of my companies can help, amazing. If not, I'll try to refer you to somebody that can. So LinkedIn DM is probably the best way to reach me right now.
Fantastic. Chris, thank you so much, and to keep producing all this golden content that you put out.
Stefan, always great to see you. Thanks for having me.
We hope you like listening to us. Subscribe to our podcast and the ones that we have been guests on.
And if you have any feedback for us, just do let us know. And should there be a guest that you think we should be talking to, then pitch us.
We're looking forward to seeing you.